in concept and vision, the Druid, she's very animalistic and with nature, and so we wanted to show something like her connection with the spirit world and with nature. And so our idea was that when she's gathering up the power to cast Gaea as well, a spirit bear rises from the ground and then charges off towards her target. Well, in order to get a spirit bear, we have to get Eric to model and texture it. Then I have to rig it and animate it, and then Greg has to break it up and put it in the game and then add his effects on it.
In game, ultimately, this ability is a particle effect. The thing about it is that it's also a model, and so it starts with me. Really where we started was a conversation. We decided it would be really cool if one of the Druid's abilities was this bear that she kind of summoned, and it could lunge forward and attack enemies and stuff, and kind of be like her protector, and kind of be like this being that she's really in tune with. And so we decided a bear would be really cool. The first thing I do is just block out the proportions of the bear. So when I started, I kind of just blocked out this bear that's on all fours. We knew we wanted him to be like a real chunky, old, wise bear. So for inspiration, we definitely looked at mostly like grizzly bears, because grizzlies have this really cool like mouth structure, and they do this thing with their lip when they roar where it kind of like flaps and stuff. So we wanted to make sure that we could get some of those elements. All the characters and creatures on Crowfall, we always try to follow a principle that they could kind of be like a toy or an action figure. So rather than using alpha cards or like fancy fur or anything, I tried to come up with a style of fur that looks sculpted and kind of looked like a toy. Basically, once I kind of block out the size and proportions and stuff, I can go in and start blocking out like fur and details and what his face might look like, and try to give him some personality. So I sat down with the animators and kind of asked them, what do you guys want to do with this bear? What kind of emotion and what kind of animation is he going to have? And after we had that discussion, we realized the bear being on all fours wasn't going to be the best way to handle him, because if he's modeled like that and then he suddenly had to stand up for some reason, we realized there would be a lot of like stretching and it would look real ugly. And so we decided to model him standing upright instead. And that way it just looks nice, and it's easier for the animators to rig. And you'll see in the final ability, the way that he stands behind her and kind of lunges forward, this pose was a lot more natural. Once I finish up the sculpt, I'll go ahead and do the low poly, and once that's done, I hand it off to the animator so that they can rig it so that it's got bones and a skeleton and stuff, and from there they can go ahead and start blocking out the animations.
So when the Druid starts to cast a spell, the bear stands up, and then there's a looping part because you're charging up the spell and giving it more power, so he's going to be growling up in the air while you're charging the spell for the release. And just here's a couple of the tools that I use, like here's my character selector, so I can select the head and I can move it and adjust the animation. If I have to get in there and be more detailed with the work, I can go and grab the controls for like the face, and so that he has like a snarly lip and squinty eyes, and I can animate all that and give him just a little bit more, character. In order to get my references and like resources just to make the animation better, I usually go to like YouTube or ArtStation or Pinterest. Some of it is like, doing research. Some of it is adding your own flair, because this is a video game and we don't have to make it exactly lifelike. Right here, I'm going into the material editor and I'm editing the alpha of the bear to simulate him fading into the shot. So you start at 0. I'm going to move forward in the timeline, and then I'm going to make it like 100 when it stands up, so that he's not like completely clipping through her when like he starts to rise up. And this gives Greg a sense of timing of how the bear should materialize and when it should materialize. So we're trying to give as many visual clues as possible, so you can see this is how the spell is going to start off with both of their animations. And then the last part, just have a looping animation of the bear running. And what's going to happen is, like, when he jumps over, Greg's going to convert the bear into a particle, and then the bear's going to run off towards its target. And that's a looping animation, so we can loop it as many times as we need to in order for him to hit his target. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this off into its own separate file, clean up the run, make sure it loops right, make sure it looks right. And now it's just the technical part of exporting it, and then we hand it off to Greg, and Greg does the magic of making it work in the game.
All right, so now that this bear has made its way to effects, I'll take Dave's concept and bring it to life. So you can see in the concept that he's very like spiritual, ghost-like bear. And to get that to translate in the 3D model, we're gonna want it to be a little transparent. So the first thing I'll start with is I'll create a shader for this bear to make him transparent. And we don't want fully transparent bear. So what I end up doing in this case is lighting his edges so that we can see like a nice silhouette from any angle. But also like we want to see some of the detail in there. So like I'll map Eric's ambient occlusion map, which will give me some of the shader detail, the normal map detail, which will extrude from the mesh. From there, I can go to a proxy material that I just grabbed one of John's environment model shaders, just so it's visible. And I'll create my trails on something like this so that there aren't too many effects clashing at the same time. So here on the shader, I'm playing with a little bit of the sliders. For it to feel more ghost-like, we wanted like a little bit more transparency. And if it was as opaque as that, like it would really clash with the other effects. You wouldn't know what you were looking at. The smoke and the trails would be a little bit more difficult to make out. From here, I'm adding the trails onto the bear, which is basically a small emitter that's emitting a trail that I'm cycling around different parts of this bear. Like there are a few on the arms, the legs, the torso, the spine. And I created these proxy models just so I can see the motion before they're created. So once I have the trails in there, I can start layering on other effects that are really going to help sell that this bear is spiritual. I'm going to layer on some particles. We also want to play with the idea that he's coming out of this smoke cloud. So I have smoke emitting from his body, and we played with the opacity of it to get him just to feel colder and like more ominous, like give him volume. From here, I'm going to take all of Doggett's animations. I'm going to hook them up to our powers. I'm going to hook in his intro animation, his loop animation, and his run animation. Now that the effect's in game, you're going to be able to see that she's going to start casting, she's going to charge her loop, and then she's going to fire. From that fire, you're going to see a distortion effect, make that burst feel a little bit more powerful. And then once it hits its target, it's going to jump between targets. So this also needs to feel pretty impactful. From there, I have more trails bouncing between the targets and then leaving bear swipe hit effects. So this is the Druid's Gaea's Wail bear effect. It could use a little bit more work, but by the time you see this in game, it's going to be pretty badass. All right, see you guys in game.